Mimico Cruising Club. Tanis was born in Port Arthur, but her family moved to Montreal when she was 6. She was 10 when her father built a sailing pram for her to sail out of their cottage on the St. Lawrence near Gananoque, where the family spent each summer. Peter emigrated from Germany to Montreal when he was 11. When they met in their late 20s, Peter, an engineer, read one sailing book and became an instant expert. Regardless, he too was hooked, and for their engagement, he gave Tanis, get this, a 16-foot Tanzer called Diamond. Tanis was much happier with it than any ring. I call that creativity. They moved from Montreal to Toronto in 1974, as did many Quebec Anglophones. In the spring of 1975, they chartered in the then relatively unspoiled BVIs with close friends. Their first experience of a keelboat and the cruising life. That winter in Toronto, sitting together in front of a crackling wood fire with brandy flowing, the two couples made a pact to circumnavigate together. The other couple divorced, but the Bogers started searching for a bigger ocean-worthy boat. They found it in a Goderich 41, a bare-hull steel cutter, Windwoman, and she was commissioned in 1983 after Peter dedicated most every spare moment for 5 years to finish her. In 1986, Peter and Tanis resigned from their management positions and sold their Bloor West Village house. In the first week of September, they and their homegrown crew, Jennifer 8, Alex 6, left Mimico Cruising Club on their trip around the world. 5 years later, they returned to Mimico in July of 1991. On their return, Peter and Tanis both found employers with whom they stayed to retirement. They settled in Etobicoke, where they still live. Their preteen children integrated back into real school, completed university, married extraordinarily suitable life partners, pursued so far successful careers, and Jennifer at least has produced 2 grandchildren. Extra points for Jennifer. Peter, Tanis, and Windwoman are still active sailing members of Mimico Cruising Club. Please give Peter and Tanis a warm Shellback welcome.
I am delighted to hear that Diane has told the first part of the story for us. So we really don't need to spend much time. Here you have a picture of Windwoman in its inception. We actually went up there to have a look at Bogers 35, and because we had a hard time finding the right. Okay. The technical challenge like that? Okay. So we went up to have a look at a Bogers 35 because at that time we had concerns about finding a really good ocean cruising boat. Things have changed since then. There are a number of options on. And when we went up there, we saw hull number 1 of the Goderich 41 being built and decided to scale up. So our footitis was from a 16-foot Tanzer to a 41-foot Goderich. We decided to do it one step. The interior, one of the things that made it maintainable is the fact that the whole of the interior is sprayed with a closed-out foam, polyurethane, which is the thing that prevents rusting. Critical. And you can see us starting. When we got Windwoman, the hull of Windwoman delivered in February 79, I said, holy ass, what did we get ourselves into? And start from there. In 1983, I think it was fall, late fall, we finally got her to a stage. Tanis violently objected to the red stripe and the colors, so they duly got changed. That's in the course of her life. Jennifer and Alex Talking us to the first launch. This was in Port Credit, we built it in the shed. The old Pentagon, which you can't do anymore. Anyhow, it was a major experience, so we started from there. And so we have the basic crew of Windwoman. It's probably one of our best pictures, taking off from there. Tanis reminds me that we probably had a big fight just before the picture was taken. That's why it turned out that well. This is the morning in September when we left. And now, when we see a sky like that in the morning, we don't believe anymore. Because we really got beaten up going across Lake Ontario. Tanis' mother had joined us. And she said she was only concerned when she saw the lights of Rochester's through the hatches above, that she started getting a little bit concerned on there. We wound up surfing into Rochester. The water was going across the breakwater on each side, and you have to make that left turn. Otherwise, you wind up in the railroad bridge. So that was the exciting start. And our whole circumnavigation, that was the only time we actually burst a fender being tied up from there. So this was a route. We decided to go the inside route going down. So Oswego, Erie Canal, Hudson River, spent a bit of time in New York, then tucked out and back into the canal, and we wound our way down to Miami. And some exciting sailing along there, dredging the canal as part of it, as most people do. And one of the highlights was that it actually anchored in the Miami Stadium, where they have the various performances there. We were supposed to meet some friends. They got kicked out by the police, but we didn't know that. So we went in there very quietly, and we actually wound up, staying there overnight.
This one microphone is going to break our shtick because we always interrupt each other. What Peter failed to mention about Miami, and then we'll move along, is that we had a wonderful sail down from Fort Pierce down to Miami, because we got wind off Florida and we were only about a mile off, so we had flat water and 30 knots on the beam. So we just flew all the way down, and we got to Miami not at 6 o'clock as planned in the morning, but at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so we went into Miami Harbor in the dark. And there are lots of ships in Miami Harbor, and not very many places to anchor. So when we went into this marine stadium, we thought our friends were in there because it was pitch dark, and we didn't want to put lights on in case the police found us, because they already moved us once. It was in the morning we discovered, I actually thought I saw the boat. In the morning when the light came, the boat wasn't there. I was really mad at them. Where did they? Turned out they weren't there at all. I just imagined everything. So there you go. That's how it happens. Do you want to take it back? So, having reached Miami and having gone to Disney World, which is how we got the kids on the boat in the first place, we did the Thorny Path over to Hispaniola, over to the Dominican Republic, made our landfall at Samana, crossed the passage, the Mona Passage, and it was very calm. We were very fortunate almost all our trip that whenever there were places that were dreaded, it turned out to be their nice day. And we made it across the Mona Passage and then popped along the bottom of Puerto Rico, which is where, and then through to the Virgins, and then jumped from the Virgins down to Martinique, and then across to Venezuela, which we loved, and Los Roques, which are the idyllic tropical islands, beautiful white sand, completely uninhabited, just gorgeous. Then over to Curacao, where we provisioned and took in things like, that was where we got the wind vane, right? Yeah, things like that, because a friend of ours had told us, if you want to, you want to go to circumnavigate, remember that once you go through Panama, you're committed. So stop and think. So we didn't. We said we give it a time in the Caribbean and see if we liked it, and we did. So we said, well, we'll go for it. And then we went down to Panama. But in Puerto Rico, we got the last member of our crew. This was a cat that, we had a cat at home. My daughter loved the cat. We gave the cat to a friend of hers. And I promised her, because she was heartbroken, that as soon as we made an ocean passage, if we ever ran into a cat, we'd get a cat. Well, when we got to Puerto Rico, I'm just trying to remember, you'll have to forgive me, I'm a little bit tired and I'm getting old. Samana. When we got to Samana, the people there from the Seven Seas Cruising Association, a very nice Puerto Rican family, happened to have cats. My daughter went in to visit and she saw them, and she jet propelled our rowing dinghy back to the boat to inform me that there were cats ashore that were ready, kittens, to be adopted. So this is purpose, because we got her on purpose. Okay, oops. So we got to the Panama, transited the Panama, and I'm going to try to go a little faster because at the time we're trying to get to Australia. Stopped at the Galapagos, stayed there for 3 weeks. Then on to Hiva Ova, Araroa, Bora Bora, Maria Bora Bora, and over from there to Suvarov and Fiji, and down to New Zealand. And that took us about a year. Oops, okay, jeez, I must hold too long. This is the fellow who gave us 3 weeks. This is the port captain in Galapagos. He and Peter became instant best friends. Peter went in with a carton of cigarettes. And he gave us 3 weeks. And we did the regular things that cruisers do in Galapagos. This is, you can actually swim with seals there. They're so unafraid of people that you can actually, almost pat them. It's lovely. And this is just a picture taken with my phone, because they were right there, of the boobies. They don't care about people either, but they got eaten because they didn't care about people. Now, is everybody hearing me? Okay. And we also found some of the most famous residents of the Galapagos. It's very special. I'm sure a lot of people in the room have been there or are planning to be there at some time. Okay. This is not practice, by the way, in case you can't figure it out.
This is in transit. We met up with a couple of friends in the Galapagos, hiding out from the authorities before we went to the Navy base to get some fuel to allow us to stay a bit more days. However, their ways of giving you diesel fuel is through hoses that are about 6 inches, with a nozzle about 6 inches wide, difficult to feed into the tanks, in terms of treatment. Anyhow, we left the Galapagos, company with 2 other boats, and it was dead calm. About 300 miles off the Galapagos, we decided to go for a swim. Obviously, one person stayed on board each boat, just in case. And when everybody got back, we were ready to go. Everybody started their engines, I started ours, and we had this huge amount of great black smoke coming out of the engine. When I put the dipstick in, it was all cloudy, and anyhow, what happened is that we had seawater get into the engine and brittle the valve springs, and all the valve springs were gone. So we were without an engine, which meant no power. We decided then that we were a sailboat, so we would sail the longest passage in the world that you have to sail without any chance of stopping. This is from the Galapagos to the Marquesas. The kids still remember that as one of the best passages that they had, because we were down to kerosene lights. We ate all the meat very quickly, plus Tanis did a phenomenal amount of canning while we still had the ability. We got our positions, we got the sextants out, we started practicing, and we sailed. And 20 days later, so we arrived at the Marquesas. And in the Marquesas, we spent time there, and from the Marquesas went on to to the to Omotas, which those of you who remember Kontiki, Kontiki actually crashed on the railroad, which is why we picked it, and we made friends with the family there. It was fantastic. We went in through the pass, and it was really boisterous and really windy, so we dropped our chain, but because we had no place to go in back of it, we also dropped the anchor that was on the road with just a bit of chain, and when the wind abated, we actually wound up losing the anchor. It chafed down for like very, very quickly. So these guys, we went into the village and we had a group of guys coming out with the most modern aqua lungs that you can envision. Tanis had this idea with these bare-chested men diving down 60 feet, no such deal, but they went down, retrieved the anchor, the shackles, and everything that went on there. We then helped them set up a cooperative because they were growing black pearls there, and they were being screwed by the Japanese. So we had a number of meetings where we helped them set up their own cooperative and manage their production and things like that. They also got some liquor from us before we realized that it was illegal. So, however, it was great. Going from there, we went on to Tahiti, where we arrived just at Fed, and you had all the islands come around, including Hawaii and everybody else, in the competition, both in terms of rowing. You had this singing, it's dancing, the singing, you know, various other sports. It was amazing. The interesting thing is when we were hanging out there, friends of ours, Scott, myself, kept buying for the binoculars to get a close look at the ladies doing the tamare, which is really fast hula. And we had Tanis and her friend Margaret, and I had to swap the foredeck after every session. When they were sitting there watching all these guys rowing by and doing the competitions. So it was fun. Huahine, typical fishing thing. It was an important place because of the religious connotations, and we celebrated the 1st of July, 4th of July together with American friends. We met up. It was really great. And of course, Bora Bora, that most people know of. And moving on, the celebration.
We almost left Bora Bora after, but a friend of ours came by and said, "You can't go now. It's my birthday." That night, the wind came up to 65 knots. Friends of ours had left, lost their mast and motored back in. I will tell just when to start moving. Motored back in under fumes, basically. They just made it into the pass. They had a wooden mast, and they managed to tie it to the boat, and it took them a year to replace the mast because Bora Bora is not exactly the center of the universe. And so we met up with them again in Bali, and they had a kid. They spent a year fixing things up and a year getting to Bali, and we spent a year working in Australia, so we sort of matched up. Anyway, this is just a picture of Wind Woman. You can see that she's right down to the teak, but we basically sailed downwind the entire time we were sailing. And so we did wing on wing, all sorts of combinations. This is when we got the staysail pulled out or tied out, as well as the jib and the main, just maximizing. Crossing the South Pacific, actually, there are very few times that we really have to shorten sail. It's it's more you want to keep going faster. I'm the faster person. Okay. Oh, this is a quick one. Someone was asking us about American Samoa, and we said it was the armpit of the South Pacific. It's a gorgeous island. It's just beautiful. It has a hurricane wall to die for. There are 3 tuna fish packing plants in the harbor. The harbor is one where these are the see how I can do it. These are the cruising boats anchored at the bottom of the harbor. It's a naval base for the American Navy. When you were there, it was polluted. And when you went ashore in your dinghy, the first thing you did was wash yourself off. It was awful. And the people were mostly on relief or the dole, and they were not happy people. It was a very sad thing for something as beautiful as this place. And this is what our anchor chain looked like before we left this harbor. This is growth that came on in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, the chain came like that. It took Peter almost, over a day to knock it off. It was right down to the anchor.
The prop was covered with that stuff also, so when we turned on the engine to start up on the thing, the boat wouldn't move.
Yeah, we couldn't get the anchor up. Anyway, we went 30 miles across a channel to Western Samoa. And in Western Samoa, it was a different place. They are independent. They did belong to Germany and New Zealand, independent, but now they're independent and very proud. And as we were saying to, I think it was talking to Linda, when we were there in the morning, every morning they raised the flag, the band came out and marched up. And if you were in the town square when the flag went up and weren't standing at attention, the residents would tell you that you had to stand at attention. And we're talking about Samoans here, so you stood at attention. No. Okay. And this is their that's their traditional house. The extended family gathers every evening. Every group of extended family has one of these, and that's where they all meet at night, some to eat, some just to talk, and they are an extremely united group of people. Beautiful place. Okay, so now we go sailing, and we're sailing from Samoa, heading for Fiji, right, Peter?
Yeah.
And this is friends of ours in their Valiant 41, and the woman on board said, hey, we're going to be sailing together, so let's stay really close together, and that way at night we only need one person on watch, which means you get more sleep. And that's what we did. So we took turns. We had four crew that were on watch, and that was a good one. Remember that for when you do long passages. We got to Fiji, and fortunately we're given permission to go to the Astrolabe Reef, which is not a place that most tourists are allowed. And when we got there, we had to fix the dinghy, and so we found a deserted island and put the tent up for the kids, so they could be on shore and we could be on the boat. And then,
well, basically we found out that the village was on the other side of the island, and they were wondering how come we had to come over to do civil in terms of asking their permission and participation, and found out that the kids were on a sacred graveyard. So we went on from there, but you can see we took part in the kava ceremony. They used artillery shells to pound the kava, and we all participated in it, and we
go
looked
back
very.
to that picture. You see, they're all looking, even the kids.
We're all looking a little bit spaced, including the kids. They're very free with the handing out the kava, which was pretty good. We really got into the village life, and they put on an art departure. They put on a feast, as they call it. We were really anxious to get out, but we didn't feel that we could leave at the moment, as the sun was going down, and we could no longer read the water very well, and we almost wound up on the reef when we went out. We sort of, where we thought the pass was, couldn't really see it. Usually we have the rat lines, you go out, you look for it. So what we did is with the radar, we got the distance off, and we just paralleled the reef to an area where we knew that there was an open passage, and kept our fingers crossed that we wouldn't hit any motus on the way going down there. And we finally escaped and made our way to New Zealand. Now, we made our landfall in New Zealand under radar because the fog was so thick we could not see anything. Couldn't see anything beyond the like, well, yeah, one or two boat lights, and that's it. So, and wound up in Auckland, rented a RV, and toured New Zealand, which was fantastic. I mean, the scenery is magnificent. Those who have seen The Lord of the Rings will know what it's like. In New Zealand, the cat left us because if you go to Australia with a cat, she has to go into 6 months quarantine in England. And that was not an option for us, and you couldn't tie up if you had an animal. So, Tanis' mother was visiting us at that time, and she volunteered to take the cat. We had her shipped back to Toronto, fairly cheaply, $400. So, as Tanis says, if you're willing to grow a tail and go in a cage, good way to travel. Australia was for us home for almost a year. There were regulations back and forth, but I was allowed in on a exchange visa or one which I have set up where they actually transfer skills, etc. So as soon as I was able to come in, Tanis was able to come in. And we had to fly back to New Zealand in order to come back in from there and register. But we had a great time, and we had went back to normalcy. Even the kids are growing up as we're on the boat, and they go into school, which is actually quite delightful.
Yes, every morning we were tied up at what I call the tacky marina. We were paying $100 a month to use the marina. We were in a place called Waverton, which is one of the high-end suburbs on the north shore of Sydney, multi-million-dollar homes just up the road. Fortunately, we got to know a few of the people living in the multi-million-dollar homes, which was very, very nice. But every morning, the bow was tied to the dock. They climb over in their school uniforms, and then we climb over with our briefcases and walk up the road and get on the subway and live like normal people. This is me at work over there in the pink and white. It was a great group, and we were on contracts, both of us. We were on contracts where from week to week we'd tell them when we'd be in. Peter got work with the Curry Coopers and Libran, which he had worked for in Canada, and I got work with Imperial Oil, which I had also worked for in Canada, and it worked out extremely well. And I'll tell you one thing I like about the Australians, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time, these people know how to work hard, but they know how to down tools at 5 o'clock and have a good time too. You know, they're not like us who sort of hang around for another hour or two because we feel obliged to or whatever it is. So it was good, it was great. And this is New Year's. We arrived in March, it was raining. It was pouring in Australia. And Australia is an outdoor country. And the Australians were mean nobody said hello. You went into a store and they could hardly bear to sell you something. It was awful. And we said, gosh, why did we leave New Zealand? We had such a great time in New Zealand. Why did we do that? And then the sun came out. And the next thing you know, someone's knocking on the hall saying, want to come to a Barbie? They live outside. They were useless when it was raining. But we soon made close friends. They like their fireworks, by the way. This is our view, actually. We were but from the other side, we were behind the Sydney Harbour Bridge. We could see the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House from our boat in our $100 slip. Pretty good, eh? This couple, she's originally from Kiev, and he's an Australian, but he's a cordon bleu chef. He actually has been a chef at Maxime's in Paris. He lived on the way home from work. We always were stopping by to have pate with him. He always had pate on the go. It was just great. And she was an even better cook. And these are, he was an architect. They built their own house, and it was just up the road in Waverton, and it was wonderful. And the daughter was about Jennifer's age, so they immediately bonded, and they were wonderful people. I'll get to that in a second. This is the Friday night dinner at our at our yacht club. There was a little beach at the marina, and everybody got out Friday night, brought a potluck, brought their guitars or whatever they played, and we just were on the sand and had a lot of fun. And this is a couple. They're Americans. He was Australian. She was, English.
She was Canadian.
Canadian English. That's right. She was the luckiest person I ever met. She'd go gambling and she always won. I'm not kidding you. She always won. It was unbelievable. And he had been, amongst other things, a taxi driver and a captain of he wore captain stuff all the time. Anyway, and this woman, she wrote romance novels. She wrote for Harlequin, and he was a nuclear physicist. Yeah, these are the people who were at our tacky marina. It was just great. And we finally had to go, so we pulled women up on the hard. I'll give this back to Peter in a second. But the friends that had the house just up the road went skiing in Switzerland. And so they said, how would you like to have our house for a month and our BMW so you can get around? And we said, yes, please. And that's why I took all of the cushions and everything and fixed them up. I had a sewing machine to actually sew. It was just wonderful to be able to spread things out. And that's one reason why we got going. And now Peter will tell you about this fellow.
Actually, what the key thing is in the major attraction is being able to haul out. If he liked you, he would let you haul out at the slit. If he didn't like you, he would tell you to butter off. Just didn't take it. He is the guy that actually built Dame Patty, the Australian, the US Cup entry for Australia a number of years, many years ago. But so it was absolutely fantastic. If we had a couple of things to do around, oh yeah, we can do that easy. And here it is. And while we enjoyed the benefits of life ashore. And Tanis actually would be this. If you see the paper tape, that's the actually cash register of when we were restocking the boat to start off across the Indian Ocean, up the Berry Reef and across the Indian Ocean. The people in the grocery store turned out to be very helpful. They pushed the extra carts as we went around.
Was that just for the beer, Peter?
No, the beer is...
The beer was separate.
The beer is separate, that's totally different. Actually, the best beer that we stocked up on was Fiji Bitter, when we were in Fiji. And the beer is fantastic. Lakota #1 brewery was the thing. And we filled all the hulls of the boat, everywhere we could, with the beer. At the same time, that's where I gave up smoking. So I took it up again as we went around, and the only tobacco we had on board was the stuff that you gave to the local chiefs in Fiji. And I used the kids' exercise book paper to roll the tobacco in. It shows the desperation.
So just to show you what's happened, so we're in Sydney, which Mark, but you know where it is. And we went up the coast to Brisbane, pretty well straight. We stopped in a couple of places, then went through the Whitsundays and up to Cairns and to a place called Lizard Island. Going up, once you get to the Whitsundays, you're right into the barrier reef and it starts to narrow. And at night we were sailing up the inside the barrier reef. And, sorry, what was that?
That's where a guy lost his foot to a shark yesterday or the day before.
Oh, dear. So it was nighttime, and we're going up, and we're sailing, we have the motor on because we know that there's a fishing fleet to the north of us, and we're going north. So we wanted to have the motor turning over so that if we had to do some fast maneuvering, get out of the way of a fishing boat and then all its nets, we could. Unfortunately, the boat started not responding in the way we expected. The wheel did not work. You tried to turn it starboard, it would not turn to starboard. It would sort of go funny. And then we tried to turn it to port, and it would turn a little bit to port, and then it would not turn a little bit to port. So we were perplexed about this for what? At least an hour, right?
Close to that.
Yeah, we were really, really worried about it. And then we looked down at the gear shift. We had it in reverse. So this is your tip for today. Always check your gear shift if the engine is on, because between this wind pushing the sails, pushing us up, and the reverse, we were basically stalled in the water. So that's why the rudder wasn't doing much. Once we got that, I thought it was something wrapped around the propeller, but when that was done, we were on our way. And then we got to Cairns is wonderful. The best thing about Cairns was the train trip into the interior to a little place called Katoomba. Where did I get that from? Katoomba, and they have one of the most beautiful and biggest butterfly houses I have ever been to. It was just wonderful, and a wonderful one. If you're in that part of the country, I would recommend that to you as a tourist stop. And the train trip was fabulous. We got to Lizard Island is a very tall island, right close to the barrier reef. There are very few islands that are near the barrier reef. And this rock pile, is a cairn, which was started by Cook and his crew. Because Captain Cook was, as you probably know, was being squeezed in Endeavour. He couldn't find a way out of the barrier reef, and it was getting narrower and narrower, closer to land. And then he saw Lizard Island, walked up, and it's at least 400 feet high, and it's hot when you're in the tropics. And looked out over, and just a little bit to the north and the east, he saw a pass out of. So that's why Captain Cook remained to do all those charts that sailors relied on for years. And so we added our stones to this cairn. And this is a test now. Can anyone see the cuttlefish? Where is it? Anyone you're going to, which one, the black and white one? No, next guess? This is what this is called camouflage. It really works. Here, I'll just, there it is, right there, that's a cuttlefish. Can you see the little red light or not? Yeah, that's the cuttlefish right here. Yeah.
Oh, the big one.
Yeah, that's a cuttlefish. That's before the budgies get it. And one of the most beautiful animals, are the giant clams. They come in neon colors. Blue, lime green, orange, bright yellow. They're just, and the whole rim of their is like that. And they're so large and bulky that you can stick your hand in them because they don't snap shut. They just slowly close. I mean, it's death to anything that's in there, obviously. But if you're quick about it, a little fish could get out. But this was Lizard Island. It was great. And from Lizard Island, I keep doing that. From Lizard Island, we went to Darwin. And when we arrived, you can see that the boats are anchored way, way out. And we couldn't understand why they weren't anchoring in further. What the heck? So we anchored in further. Well, we anchored in a little further than the most outermost boat on the theory that all those boats must know something we didn't know. And what they knew is they have 30-foot tides. Okay? So this thing sticking in the water that you think is, nothing, this is almost low tide. And the boat coming in is actually the boat you saw in the picture with the calm is. We went most of the way around the world with this couple. What you do is, you bring your boat up beside it, tie it on to the uprights, and wait for the tide to go out. You clean your bottom. You know, it's great, it works perfectly. You're standing on sand, you just scrape your bottom off, and then when the tide comes in again, you go off and go to the next place. Okay.
The next place is, again, we rented an RV. It's a great way to travel with the family. The kids love it, they're comfortable. And we explored Kakadu Park, which is up there. And then you have things like the old paintings, and some of them are 20, 30, 40,000 years old. And Tanis tells me we have to speed up. We will. I think we still have about.
Where was that?
In Kakadu National Park, so it's northern Australia. And the other thing that you see there are the termite mounds, and they're all oriented in one direction. And it's actually phenomenal construction.
They're oriented north-south, so they get the least amount of sun.
The other thing is, hiding in there is a crocodile, somewhere in there. So they have huge saltwater crocodiles up there that infest this. If you remember Crocodile Dundee, that goes from that. But anyhow, the objective of going to Darwin, first of all, was that we wanted to go into the Darwin-Ambon race, which takes us into that whole Indonesian area. And so we went into Darwin, got the boat ready to do the race, and went to Ambon, cruised around Indonesia, Komodo, Bali, which was one of my favorite islands, and from there started our trek across the sea in, let's see what we got. Yeah, here's we're starting out on the race, the Darwin to Ambon race, and here is people yelling, "You're barging, you're barging!" There was no wind, there was nothing we could do. We were sort of moving along, with everybody else, and the way the water was going. But anyhow, we sorted ourselves out, and this is the reason why we went into the Darwin to Ambon race. You got accompanied by the warship. You got to fly the Darwin to Ambon race flag, which gives you preferred entry. And all of the vessels in Indonesia were informed that when you see a ship with this flag, don't give them any hassle, because we're there and we'll come after you. So that really worked out well. One of the criteria of the race is that you have to hand steer all the time. You have to pass 4 adult people steering. And so we picked up these 2 ladies from Calgary and Edmonton, they're sisters. They had never really sailed a boat before in their life, but a friend of ours had given them a lift and said, they're fine, So we took them on board as part of the crew without any experience. And Tanis can tell you the story about the life ring that fell over.
So we are sailing up to Ambon, and the lady on the right, who is the older of the 2, was steering. It was about 1:30 in the morning. I was on watch with her, and she managed to broach the boat. And this is an experience. And the life ring, which we have mounted fairly high on the boat, just lifted right off its holder and fell into the water. So I told Peter about it, and he said, we'll let it go. And then he had a second thought. He said, it has a EPIR bonnet attached to it. Okay, so no, we're going to go after it after all. So I was at steering, and Peter went up to the front with the boat hook, and we headed for the flashing light, which was also on it. And he hooked it first try. Way! And then the wave came and washed the boat ring off the boat hook. And it was back in the water. Took us 2 hours to recover. It's not easy to pick things up at sea. Make sure you're tied on. It's nice to wear a life jacket, but you don't want to overuse it. Just tie it on. Anyway, and then we, let's see what happened next. When we got to Ambon, we were in the middle of the race. despite the 2-hour delay, we finished in the middle. It was a wonderful place. Actually, I should tell you, this is a favorite story of mine, and unfortunately I don't have a picture of it because we're having so much fun. Ambon is a little tiny town on a completely Muslim island, and the town is still Catholic. Okay, it's a Christian enclave in a Muslim community, and that's one reason why it's the end of the Darwin-Ambon race. Anyway, we got there, and the townspeople were very welcoming and friendly, and they had a big dance for us. The 2 girls went. The one on the left was a phys ed instructor. Okay, they had a dance, but what we did was a Portuguese quadrille. And a Portuguese quadrille, this is like from the 17th century, lasts about 20 minutes. You're dancing around in a great big circle, and you're dancing for 20 minutes. And there's these little 80-year-old women who are dancing around the circle, and we're all exhausted. You know, we can barely make it. And anyway, so we were dancing around and having fun, and then they sang us a whole bunch of songs. And then one guy, the master ceremonies, got up and said, "Now, we'd like you to sing us one of your songs," to the international group of sailors. So we ended up singing Waltzing Matilda, because everybody knows Waltzing Matilda. And then they said, "But show us one of your dances." So we sort of scratched our head because we didn't think that, you know, and the phys ed teacher says, "I know what we'll do. We'll do the chicken." So we all did the chicken, and for the rest of our stay there, when we were walking down the street, the ladies would go. It was great. Anyway, here's the chicken.
As we're going up there, you get these boats coming and trying to sell you anything possible as we move along. The houses, when you go to the interior, the houses are built of solid teak, so we were a little bit envious, given the cost of the teak on board Windwoman, which we couldn't replicate today. And Tanis does the washing. You know, so as we're inland, finds a stream, takes the washing there. Pretty soon she has company, and they actually help her do the washing, and that turned out really well. From one of the islands, we went to Komodo, and you can see the Komodo dragons, and they really are really large lizards. And they have demonstrations with a goat that they hang down there, and it's gone in short order. So.
I wish I had something that would give you a sense of their size, but in fact, a Komodo dragon would go from Diane to the end, to easily the middle of that table, probably to the end. They're big, they're 14 feet long. They're big animals.
And we arrive in Bali. On the way to Bali, and this goes against Tanis's telling of the tales, like we've never encountered bad weather. We ripped the triple reef mainsail, okay, the first time. And this happened, we were going down the channel between Lombok and Bali, and so as we turned around, it funneled the wind, and we really got this surge. So that was interesting. And there was no zigzag sewing machine on the island. So we reinforced it with 2 extra bands of sailcloth on each side and sewed it multiple times, plus glued it in between. Anyhow, there's fantastic environment, the temples that you see there. And the grapes, the monkeys, okay, so on the visitations. And this is one of our favorite pictures. They use the ducks to control the pests in the rice field. The ducks are trained to follow the guy on the pole, and they all march in there. The guy sticks the pole into the rice field, the ducks spin it there. At the end of the day, the guy picks up the pole, and the ducks follow him out. And so that's
They're-
pretty good.
They're bonded, they bonded to the pole, not to the guy.
So and at the end of the year, there is some excellent dinners available.
And lots of rice.
And we went in the interior, we stayed at this, I guess it's hotel or whatever, open air type of thing in the middle of a rice field. And this is the entry, and you can see the drumsticks on each side. And our friend Lynn is pretending to have an equivalent size, so it didn't quite work. You can see the terrace fields. And one of the things that existed in Maui when we passed is this phenomenal integration between the religious side of the Balinese with the personal life and the commercial side, and being able to integrate it all and not lose the family or the way of life that goes on there. So I found that particularly fantastic. Markets
Provisioning?
for provisioning to head out again. And Tanis can tell us on our way to Christmas Island.
So, from Bali, we headed to Christmas Island and then on to Cocos Keeling, both of which are islands owned by Australia. This is Christmas Island. What was it? What had
Phosphate plant.
phosphate plant, but it had fallen on hard times. This is the protected harbor at Christmas Island. That's the Indian Ocean you're looking at just in the back there. So if the wind was right, you were okay, and if it wasn't right, you were not okay. However, we had a stop there. It was fun. They had one restaurant. They had a pretty basic life. We got a car and we went up and traveled along the road along the spine of the thing. And unfortunately, I didn't get what I should have gotten. We stopped and we picked this up. There's our car. When we're driving on the road, suddenly there were crabs all over the road. These crabs were migrating, and the road was at the top of the spine, and they migrate from one side of the island to the other. And they were just, as far as we could see down the road, it was red. It was the most unbelievable thing. I just wanted to, it's just interesting. This is Christmas Island? Cocos Keeling, yes. Cocos Keeling and Christmas Island are both used as, mainly Christmas Cocos Keeling are used as quarantine islands for bringing livestock into Australia. They're very, very strict about this. Cocos Keeling is, as far as I'm concerned, famous for the fact that it has this wonderful ferry, that goes to the big town. There's the big town. That's the whole big town, by the way. And where you can buy a $9 cabbage.
At that time, 30 years ago.
30 years ago. A very, very, very limited supplies. Just really quite remote. And then from Cocos Keeling, a big jump over to Mauritius, across the Indian Ocean. So when we left Cocos Keeling, we took down a big jib, put up the Yankee. We're all ready for the Indian Ocean, which is supposed to be extremely boisterous. Got out there, and the first day we went back to the big jib because we needed something to push us along. However, the Indian Ocean did not disappoint. The wind did come up, and we had really good sailing, downwind sailing. Circumnavigators hardly ever go upwind. Downwind sailing, and time does not allow, but we have a video taken by a friend of ours. This is our friend. So we set off at different times in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We practically ran each other down. Explain that to me. But while we're doing this, taking a picture of him, he was videotaping us leaping off the waves. Windwoman weighs 38,000 pounds. She doesn't do much leaping. She's my kind of girl. But it was a pretty good sailing, but very strong. We arrived at Mauritius. Mauritius is extremely rocky. All the fields in Mauritius have been excavated. Big, huge rocks have been moved to the side to create fences. I don't think we're going to get through this. Okay. And this is downtown downtown, what is the name? It's Mauritius, downtown Mauritius. Okay. And Mauritius is the place of the extinct dodo, the huge lily pads, a small child, like Alex actually was on one, but I don't have that picture anymore, unfortunately. And this is a sand, you know, the rainbow sands. These you've probably seen in other parts of the world, but they're still extremely rare. And the century plant, which fortunately for us was in bloom once in a century. So, and we left Mauritius and went to?
After Mauritius, it was Reunion, which is still a French arrondissement right now. Oh, it's a volcanic island, and it is actually very beautiful. I mean, it's gorgeous in terms of the flowers.
These are weeds.
Yeah, there are weeds over
They're
there.
weeds.
But you can see how it actually works out. From Reunion, we went on our way at the bottom of Madagascar and towards Richards Bay. And on that route, we actually managed to blow out the Triple Reef Main the second time, sorry. And going across, we looked at the weather forecast. We had weather facts and we said there was a low hanging off the bottom of South Africa. I figured we needed 6-8 hours to get across. However, little to our knowledge, the low had taken off. And as we crossed, you got standing waves. You looked on one side of the cockpit, that's very normal. Looked out the other side of the cockpit, it's 20 feet down. We're riding right on the edge of the wave. Interesting experience. It's the only time in our circumnavigation that Tanis allowed me to smoke down below. So, Richards Bay, from where we traveled inland to Kruger Park and the other areas. We spent 4 months in South Africa, Durban, and East London. This is one of the major journeys which everybody dreads because of the Agulhas current and the weather that you get around there. So, East London, Port Elizabeth, and going around the Cape. The journey into Kruger Park was actually quite great because we were staying in these roundabouts or these huts, whatever the thing is, and Tanis got us up at 3:30 every morning because we had to get out on the road to see the animals. And the natives sort of did not quite live in that luxury as we're going through. This is the straight tourist attractions. I got to hold a pot. And we saw lots of animals. I mean, there's a whole collection of the tribe through South Africa. These are impalas, common as everything. After the first ooh and ah for the
First
next
100.
next 100 or so, we moved on. This is the sail that we encountered going down to East London. And we were actually boarded. There's wave on wave going down the Agulhas current, and it sounds like an express train, and it just went over.
Sorry, so Peter, it's the day, and everybody here who knows us knows this story. It's daytime, we're going south, and Peter's up in the cockpit, and our hatch is closed. There's about this much open, just a little area, and we're all below. I'm making breakfast. I've just handed him his coffee. Jennifer's doing her homework in the starboard bunk, port bunk, and Alex is doing something, not his homework, in the other bunk. And as Peter said, he heard, it sounded like a crate change to him. We didn't even hear it. What we saw below, this water came in, and we had 2 inches of water on the floor. Okay? And I thought, oh my God, Peter's been, thrown overboard or whatever. So I open up the hatch. Peter's standing there, holding his cup of coffee, except of course it's not coffee anymore, it's salt water. It come in, filled up the cockpit completely, but by the time I got out there, the cockpit had drained, thank heaven. Okay, Peter was strapped on to the binnacle, so he was okay. All we had to do was clean all the salt out of the boat. The wave that came in through the hatch missed me because I was tucked under on the port side in the galley, and it missed the nav station with all our navigation equipment on the starboard side, but it got my daughter. She was furious. But, you know, we were so fortunate. But, you know, we're a center cockpit boat. This is not something we ever expected to have to deal with.
In East London, we waited for good weather and then moved on to Port Elizabeth, which Tanis said has the best toilets ever that we've encountered.
Entire circumnavigation, these were ace.
And then we rounded Cape Agulhas, and you see a line in front of us, which is actually porpoises herding fish. We thought it was a reef or something, and really we were worried about what we were running into. And we were fortunate in terms of putting up the DRS in, because there was very light winds as we rounded Cape Agulhas and Cape of Good Horn. So, and Cape of Good Hope then. Going into here, we are on our way to Hout Bay, which is south of Cape Town, and we're really fortunate to have picked that place to stay. It's a small fishing town with fishing boats, and every morning we're out there and we're getting really fresh fish. And it's delightful. As part of everything else, our people we meet along the way. These are two people running the Rumbling Camp, where we usually went for breakfast or lunch, something of that kind. And it really impressed us. Going up, we took the bus into Cape Town, so you can see the city of the thing from Table Mountain. And the kids went, and Tanis went on an expedition down to Cape of Good Hope. Other things we did, we were there for 4 months, so we went touring, we went exploring, we saw huge things, and we were really, really